Beneath the surface of our oceans lies a realm we were never meant to see. A liquid nightmare where monstrous creatures with giant eyes hunt through eternal darkness. And some of these horrors are still alive today, lurking in places we've barely explored. If you descend 4,900 feet below the ocean's surface, you'll start to notice that the cute creatures you once saw in shallow water have become anything but cute. Their bodies stretch, their eyes grow massive or disappear completely, and they start to grow appendages in places where they absolutely shouldn't be growing appendages. We've sent rovers to Mars, we've mapped distant galaxies, but the deep ocean? We've explored less than 5% of it. We know more about the surface of the moon than we do about what's happening 6,000 feet below our own oceans. At the surface, the ocean is bright and teeming with life. Sunlight fuels plankton blooms, which feed fish, which feed entire food chains stretching from coral reefs to whales. This is the epipelagic zone where typical normal-looking creatures like the reef squid make their home. But descend below 200 meters and that light begins to fade. We are now entering the Twilight Zone, a vast belt of ocean extending down to a kilometer deep. Here, the sun's rays are too weak for photosynthesis. The forests of plankton vanish. There are no plants, no green energy, only the slow snowfall of particles drifting from above, tiny fragments of plankton waste and the remains of the dead. Scientists call it marine snow. The animals of the Twilight Zone have evolved into some of the strangest forms on Earth. Many are transparent, their bodies like glass. The glass squid drifts with organs barely visible, a specter against the blue. The glass octopus is nearly invisible, its eyes the only solid feature. Why so many species adopt transparency here is still a mystery. It may be camouflage, a way to vanish in the faintest light. Others choose the opposite approach, not invisibility, but light. In the gloom, some creatures create their own glow through a chemical reaction known as bioluminescence. The firefly squid has adopted this trait, which honestly is more beautiful than creepy at first. But at the deepest part of this zone lurks the Humboldt squid, the first case of real deep-sea horror. These creatures are over 6 feet long and up to 100 pounds and are the first squids to develop hooks designed to actually rip flesh apart. They're known as the red devils of the sea, not just because of their color, but because of their hyper-aggressive nature. Most squids hunt alone, but Humboldt squids attack in coordinated groups, flash in red and white patterns across their skin to communicate mid-hunt. They can move up to 25 miles an hour, which is absolutely faster than you could ever swim. Past 1 kilometer, all sunlight vanishes. We have reached the midnight zone, a realm stretching down to 4,000 meters. Here, there is no dawn, no dusk, only endless night. Temperatures hover just above freezing. The pressure is hundreds of times greater than at the surface, and it's here that evolution becomes most creative and most horrifying. Enter the Primacoteuthis, the squid with human teeth. I honestly don't know who would have ever thought this would be a good idea to design, but this squid unfortunately does exist. Despite looking absolutely terrifying, these aren't actually teeth. They're folded lips of soft tissue that surround the squid's beak. Only one specimen has ever been caught, and it was barely an inch long. But on the complete opposite end of the size spectrum in this zone is the giant squid. This creature can grow up to an estimated 45 feet long, although so few have been found that we still don't really know the limits to their size. It has the largest eyes in the entire animal kingdom, bigger than dinner plates. They're known for battling sperm whales, which dive thousands of meters to hunt them. Scars from giant squid tentacles have been found on whale skin, and beaks from squid have been discovered in whale stomachs. Consider the dragonfish. It can produce red bioluminescence. To most eyes in the deep sea, red light is invisible, which makes the dragonfish's glow a private search beam. It illuminates prey without giving itself away. Its eyes are specially adapted to detect this hidden color. It's as though the dragonfish has invented a secret wavelength seen only by itself. The viperfish has teeth so long they protrude from their mouth even when it's closed. These aren't normal teeth. These are straight-up fangs that curve back toward the eyes. Look, we think the ocean today is scary, which fair enough. But prehistoric oceans, those were on a completely different level of nope. Picture this. You're in water so deep that sunlight gave up trying to reach you about half a mile ago. The pressure would crush you instantly. And in this pitch, black bone-crushing void, things were living. And not just living, they were thriving, getting weird, getting huge, and getting really, really good at killing stuff. The Abyssosaurus literally means bottomless lizard, which is probably the most metal name any prehistoric reptile ever got. This thing evolved the densest bones of any marine reptile ever found. Heavy, thick bones that worked as built-in weights to drag it down into the darkness. It wanted to sink, and it wanted to stay sunk. But here's what truly gets me. Some of these prehistoric monsters are still alive today. The goblin shark can shoot its entire jaw forward about a foot outside its head. Just boom. Suddenly there's a second mouth where no mouth should be, full of long needle teeth, grabbing whatever was unfortunate enough to be nearby. This thing has been using this exact same strategy for 125 million years. While everything else is evolving and changing and trying new things, the goblin shark was just sitting there going, "Nah, I'm good. This is working perfectly for me." The frilled shark has 300 teeth arranged in 25 rows, and every single one of them is shaped like a tiny trident. It moves through the water like an eel, all wavy and smooth until something gets too close. Then it strikes forward and swallows prey that's half its own size. Whole. No chewing, no tearing it apart, just straight down the hatch. They've been doing this for 80 million years. 4 kilometers down, we leave the open waters and reach the bottom of the abyss. This is the abyssal plain, one of the largest habitats on Earth, covering more than half of the planet's surface. Here, there are no landmarks, no coral reefs, no kelp forests, only a vast desert of mud extending for thousands of kilometers in every direction. At this point, it's impossible for any sunlight to penetrate here. The pressure here is immense. The temperature is just a little above freezing. All life here seems to move in a kind of eerie, slow motion. Asperiteuthis acanthoderma is an incredibly thin but incredibly long squid, reaching up to 15 feet, and all it really does is just drift. It's almost fully gelatinous, and we don't really know much about it because of how deep they're located. But at the bottom of the abyssal zone is the only squid heavier than the giant squid, the colossal squid. It's shorter than the giant squid, but still nearly 35 feet, thick and massive. It detects faint movements in the dark, then strikes with hook tentacles that twist and dig into flesh. Once it's got a hold, the squid drags the prey in and tears it apart with its massive beak capable of slicing through bone. The heaviest one recorded was over 1,000 pounds. Many animals of the abyss are giants compared to their shallow water relatives. Giant isopods the size of puppies scuttle across the sediment. These things are the size of footballs and can go 5 years without eating. 5 years. They'll remain perfectly still on the seafloor, doing absolutely nothing for longer than most people have been alive. The Greenland shark, which can dwell at these depths, may live over 400 years, the longest lifespan of any vertebrate known. Time itself seems to flow differently here. Earth's final frontier, beyond the abyssal plain, lies an even deeper frontier, the trenches carved by tectonic forces. Here begins the Twilight Zone, named after Hades, the underworld. It stretches from 6,000 meters all the way down to the deepest known point on Earth, nearly 11,000 meters below the surface. If Mount Everest were dropped into the Mariana Trench, its peak would still be more than a mile underwater. Pressures can exceed 1,000 times what we experience at the surface. To a human body, it would be instantly fatal. And yet, life not only survives here, it thrives. Among the most astonishing creatures are the snailfish that inhabit the very bottom of trenches. Fragile, gelatinous, with thin, translucent skin. They appear too delicate to exist in such a hostile world. Yet, they are the deepest living vertebrates ever discovered, and the most terrifying squid to ever exist. All the way at the bottom of the ocean exists the magna pinna, aka the bigfin squid. What this squid does is, well, we don't really know. We've never caught one alive. We've never studied a full adult, and we only know they exist from grainy camera captures. It's suspected that they don't really swim, but rather just drift. The ones we've found are about 20 feet long. The elbow bend in each arm helps it control its net of tentacles. By keeping its arms angled, the bigfin can hover and steer them without tangling them up. Even its colorless, translucent skin is practical. It appears to be designed to just hang motionless, drifting and waiting for something. At hydrothermal vents along trench walls, life takes an even stranger turn. 430 million years ago, the ocean floor was splitting open and spewing out water so hot it should have killed everything for miles around. Instead, tube worms moved in and built cities. They figured out how to live next to underwater volcanoes by making friends with bacteria. Each night, as darkness falls above, billions of creatures rise from the depths. Lanternfish, squid, jellies, and an entire army of the deep climbing towards the surface to feed on plankton under cover of darkness. At dawn, they sink back down, vanishing into the gloom. This vast daily movement is called the Deal Vertical Migration. It is the largest synchronized migration on Earth, greater in numbers than all herds, all flocks, all swarms combined. And yet, despite its scale, this event remained hidden until World War II. Naval sonar operators detected a mysterious false seabed, a dense layer that rose every night and sank every morning. It wasn't the ocean floor at all. It was life, an entire invisible world moving as one. This trick of mass movement involves counter-illumination. From below, predators can spot a dark silhouette against the faint shimmer above. To hide, animals like the firefly squid cover their bellies with light-producing organs. They adjust the brightness to perfectly match the glow from the surface, erasing their outline and vanishing into the background. It is camouflage by imitation, creating light to disappear into light. Other species play stranger games. The bloody bellycomb jelly shines in deep red. Down here, red light never penetrates, making the jelly appear completely black. Inside its stomach, bioluminescent prey is concealed, hidden from predators that might otherwise detect its glow. In a world defined by light, or the lack of it, every adaptation revolves around who can be seen and who cannot. To us, it's dazzling. Flashing dots, glowing patterns, entire bodies flickering like lanterns. But here, light is survival. Some use it to lure prey, some to find a mate, and some to disappear. The Twilight Zone is where the familiar rules of life begin to bend, where transparency is armor, where light is used to hide, where billions of animals rise and fall in a rhythm older than humanity itself. This is the threshold of the deep, the first layer of a realm we still cannot explain. 565 million years ago, before there were fish, before there were any sharks, before there were basically any animals you would recognize, the deep ocean floor was covered in things that appeared to be designed by aliens. Charnia was a 2-meter tall feather made of living tissue that had no mouth, no stomach, no eyes, and no way to move. Just stood there on the seafloor, swaying in the current, absorbing nutrients directly through its skin from the surrounding water for tens of millions of years. They had fractal patterns built into their bodies that repeated at every level of magnification, perfectly mathematical designs that wouldn't look out of place in a computer program. When Carnia finally went extinct, it left no descendants. Nothing alive today is even remotely related to it. Sea lilies grew 60 feet tall and swayed in the current with their feathery arms spread out to catch food floating by. They weren't lilies and they weren't plants. They were animals that just happened to resemble underwater flowers. For hundreds of millions of years, being a giant underwater flower was apparently the way to go. Today, there are still sea lilies down there doing the exact same thing they've been doing for 300 million years. Trilobites had the best eyes in the ocean for 200 million years. They had compound eyes with perfect crystal lenses that could see better than most creatures alive today. Then some of them looked at the deep ocean and decided to abandon it all. They just gave up sight entirely. They voluntarily became blind and moved into the darkest parts of the ocean, where they spent the next few 100 million years feeling around the mud for dead things to eat. Other animals here survive on less dramatic meals. The vampire squid, despite its terrifying name, is not a predator at all. It collects drifting particles of marine snow using long, sticky filaments. Even in the oxygen-starved depths, it thrives using a blood pigment with the highest oxygen affinity of any known cephalopod. A single whale carcass sinking to the depths becomes an oasis, feeding entire communities for decades. Within hours, scavengers gather: sharks, hagfish, amphipods. Soon after, stranger creatures arrive. Bone-eating worms called osedacs colonize the skeleton, feeding on oils locked inside the bones. Entire ecosystems spring up on a single carcass, lasting decades until all that remains is dust. Once giant isopods find a dead whale or fish, they'll gorge themselves until they are so stuffed they can barely move. Literally, it is like Christmas dinner. Then they will just sit there for months, maybe years, slowly digesting their meal while waiting for the next thing to die and sink from above. The strangest part is how good they are at waiting. Most animals would starve to death in a few weeks without food. Giant isopods have turned waiting into an art form, and when they do finally encounter a predator, they just roll up into a ball and wait for it to leave. No running, no fighting, just full-on defensive mode until the threat gets bored and goes away. For all we have seen, the deep sea remains a world of questions. More than 80% of the ocean is still unexplored. Each dive into the depths, each ROV expedition brings back creatures never before imagined. Transparent fish, glowing worms, jellies that break every rule of biology. Why do so many deep-sea creatures grow to enormous sizes? Why do others turn nearly invisible or cloak themselves in ultra-black skin that absorbs almost all light? Nearly 3/4 of deep-sea life produces light. Yet the reasons vary wildly: hunting, hiding, mating, or simply surviving. If something like the bigfin squid exists down there, what else could be lurking that we haven't discovered yet? The truth is, we've explored less than 5% of the deep ocean, which means there could be dozens of undiscovered species, some potentially even larger than the biggest ones we know. These discoveries fuel a larger question. If life can adapt to such extremes here on Earth, could it not also exist on other worlds? Icy moons like Europa and Enceladus hide oceans beneath their frozen crusts, warmed not by sunlight, but by internal heat. To study the Hadal Zone is to glimpse the possibilities of extraterrestrial oceans. Fewer people have visited the Mariana Trench than have walked on the surface of the moon. For centuries, humans imagined the trenches as lifeless voids, silent graves beneath the sea. What we've discovered instead is resilience, life that bends, reshapes, and reinvents itself to endure the most extreme pressures imaginable. Perhaps that is what makes them so powerful. They remind us that Earth still holds secrets, secrets worth protecting, secrets worth discovering. Beneath the surface of our oceans lies a realm we were never meant to see, and it's waiting